everybody, welcome to Medicine Monday. This is your host, the Freedom Doctor, Roman Johnson, coming to you with an amazing guest. We have a healer in this house who is specialized in plant medicine and other type of spiritual modalities. And who is his healer but Joy Tabernacle KMT? And I'm here to just open the way for her and let this blessing happen. So Joy, if you could, tell us who you are and, where do you come from, who your people be?
Well, my name is Joy. I am a healer, I'm a poet, I'm a troublemaker. Well, I have been in a lot of ways, organizer, well, I have been, a mother, and I just moved through life and moved toward what calls me. So, I could change at any given moment. I'm a hoodoo. And I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As you probably, if anybody's familiar with Pittsburgh, you could probably tell by my accent. It's very distinctive. But yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh, and I come from Pittsburgh. I think I'm the second generation born in Pittsburgh by way of Virginia, by way of the transatlantic slave trade. So yeah, and back and back and back. Yep.
That's what's up. So you're from Pittsburgh, and that area is very interesting, for, the Underground Railroad and as a place in the North for our ancestors and finding freedom. And as it relates to your background, coming from Pittsburgh, how do you find plant healing as a modality that you use? How do you find it? What made working with plants interesting for you as a root worker and as a healer? You feel?
Well, you are right that Pittsburgh is a very interesting place. One thing that people don't realize, that I think that most people don't realize, even living in Pittsburgh, is that we're about 45 minutes from the Mason-Dixon line. And, very close to West Virginia. And so as much as we are a northern city, there are a lot of different influences in Pittsburgh. As much as it's an urban city, it's also part of the Appalachians, and so I very much consider myself an Appalachian person. Definitely do not have the experience and would not want to talk over people who come from rural Appalachian towns, but I feel that the experience growing up in the mountains in Pittsburgh, being very close to the earth and the land in ways that I didn't even recognize until I was older. My brother used to go down to the creek and catch crawfish, things of that nature. I was always playing in the always playing in the grass, always playing in the dirt, always playing in the flowers and all of that. And what I think happened for me personally is that it allowed me to develop a relationship with certain plants that was because of my instinct to play. And a lot of times we come to, especially as adults, we come to herbalism like, well, this plant is good for this thing. This plant is good for that thing. This plant is good for that thing. And I think as a person who, a large part of my refuge as a child was, go outside and play. That having a relationship with certain plants and being able to recognize that kinship was the beginning of my development as somebody who was interested in herbalism. And I think that that's very important to note because we so much focus on the what like, what are the uses, and we don't focus on the how. And I think that as a hoodoo, and that it's so important that we recognize that the way that our ancestors interacted with plants, it wasn't just this thing is good for that, although that was a part of it. But especially with our ancestors being kidnapped and enslaved in a different land, we had to rebuild our relationship with the plants that were over here. And so it's important for hoodoos, for people who are practicing our ancestral traditions, to really begin to explore their kinship with nature, to explore their kinship with the trees, to explore their kinship with the flowers, the roots, the plants, all of those things. And of course, like most people, there are those remedies, there are those, hoodoo ways that were passed down in my family that we all have to a certain extent, whether it's a little bit or a lot. Most of us have that experience of maybe your mom, like my mom, she used chamomile tea a lot, for my stomach, if that was an issue. Castor oil was a thing, fish oil was a thing, all of the, different things that, we have been passed down traditionally in our families, but, and also, really just being aware of what's in your, what's around you, what's in your space, having that cognitive awareness that you are not the only being. One of the first things that I do when I have new students, and stop me if I'm talking too much too, or one of the things that I do when if I have a new student, or if I'm, if I'm teaching a class or anything like that, one of the first things that I do is say, take a look at the grass. It'd be regular grass. You're out here, you're in the field, maybe it's your front yard, maybe you're at a park, maybe you're just walking down the street on a sidewalk. How many different plants can you count? Because most people, they look at grass and they see grass. They just see, a big blank green canvas. But if you are being sensitive and you're being cognitively aware of this, of what is in front of you, you're going to see clover, you're going to see plantain, you're going to see dandelion, you're going to see you might see a little bit of crown vetch, you might see, wood sorrel, you might see yellow dock, you might see burdock, you might see, what I'm saying? And so, like, just having that cognition that you're not looking at weeds, or you're not looking at a lawn, even a cut lawn, you're not, for the most part, unless somebody has like that sod that they just put down and they just grassed it and there's nothing else in it. You're looking at a regular yard, you're looking about 6, 7, 8 different plants right there. There's medicine right there. You're looking at a weed, an unkempt area of weeds in your neighborhood. You're looking at some powerful, potent medicine that has the ability to support probably many of the ailments that your community may be experiencing. Because one thing that I have seen is that the plants that grow are oftentimes the plants that support our healing. Because and that is about recognizing the relationship that plants have with us. And I think that I'm just gonna stop there.
No, let the spirit lead you. One of the things I heard when you were talking, like something that always has been blessing me in how I think about like my childhood and the relationship to my own healing or healer journey, is like, like how I came close to these things. Is like I was outside with empty bottle of water, or empty bottles, some mud water, and some dandelion, mixing up together, talking about, I'm about to make a little concoction. Something I saw on TV. And one of the things that grew around me that I learned about later from the group that you moderate actually is plantain. I didn't know what it was called before, like you named and talk about like the history of that with the indigenous people and some of the history of that with our ancestors. And like, I just been now studying like other things that grow like this locally, like wild lettuce. I didn't know that plantain was used to help heal scrapes and cuts. And I didn't know that wild lettuce was used like a pain reliever. So,
Mm-hmm.
and these things are abundant, like you said, like they'll be in these overrun fields. You know, they are what people call weeds, but
Mm-hmm.
use utility too. They have some usefulness too. So
Right.
I would love for you to continue on that great strand of that you were on, and because I don't want to interrupt the fear or the flow either.
It was really it's something. Two things that you said. One thing is you playing with the dandelion in the mud and water. You can conjure up that intimacy that you had with that plant. Now you know that plant on a level that you can't get in a book. Anywhere you go, you will always be able to recognize dandelion. You know what I'm saying? And dandelion has other things that look like it, other things that, but you're going to recognize that plant because you have a level of relationship to it that comes from that play, that comes from, just being there, being with the plant. You might not even know its name. You know what I'm saying? Like when I was a kid, some of the things that were very prevalent around me were Queen Anne's lace, crown vetch, plantain, white clover, dandelion. Those were dogwood trees. Those were the things that were pretty prevalent around me when I was a child. Um, and I never knew what crown vetch was. It's a little purple flower. It's in the legume family. It's a pea family. It's a pea plant. But and I'm not even sure if it has any medicinal uses. I don't think it does actually, but it doesn't. There's two things about that plant. One is that even without knowing its name, I knew that plant.
Mm.
And the second thing is going to the idea of usefulness, is that it's not about, for me personally, it's not just about what plants can be used for in the human realm, but it's about how do we be in relationship with all that is around us. Like that crown vetch may not directly, and I think it's an introduced species and probably invasive, it's not directly medicinal for human beings, but by virtue of it being in my environment, it is important for me to have a relationship with that plant. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to ingest it. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to, make a tea or make a poultice or make anything of it, because plants and trees especially are medicinal regardless of whether or not you're ingesting it. You can see that because if you walk in the woods for 20 minutes, your mental health is improved.
Mm-hmm.
That's magic right there. That's alchemy right there. So it's important for us to look beyond just what are the physical applications of how we interact with plants and looking at it as an extractive thing. And not to say the plants can't be used, because plants can be used. I'm gonna give you an example of the type of relationship building that I'm talking about. So when my youngest son was very, very young, he was probably a couple of weeks old. He did not go to the bathroom for the whole day, right? And if you know anything about newborns, can you hear me still?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. If you know anything about newborns, when they don't go through to the bathroom, they're supposed to go to the bathroom every 2 to 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not going to the bathroom for 12 hours, it's a serious issue. You go to the hospital, whatever. So it was like probably like at what was it? It was before. It was like right at the beginning of spring for us, which Pittsburgh spring is very late, and it's still pretty cold. And so there wasn't much growing in my garden. Um, and so I go outside to my garden. I started praying. I started talking to the plants, and Basil volunteered. Basil was like, "Hey, me, pick me." So I went. I picked a leaf or two. I made him a tea, and I gave him a teaspoonful of that tea, and within 3 to 5 minutes, he had pooped.
Mm.
And that wasn't something that I read in a book. That wasn't something that I have read extensively, and I'm not against like learning. I'm not against any particular path of herbal knowledge, but it's not just about what you read in a book. There are levels of plant relationships that we can have with plants, that aid us and assist us in our lives, and that's even with the plants that we consider, not good plants. Like, we don't have to touch poison ivy for poison ivy to have a respect and have a relationship with poison ivy.
Exactly.
We don't have to touch hemlock to respect and have a relationship with hemlock, and so, learning how to navigate amongst and not seeing ourselves as beings that are separate or above everything else, which I find is a very Eurocentric sort of idea that everything is meant to be a resource to us, but instead figuring out how we exist in harmony with that which is around us is one of the things that I think has sustained us as a people. Like, you take something like, and I'm pretty sure watermelon obviously came from the continent, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly. But, watermelon in and of itself, the medicine that watermelon, why it's associated with Black people, we was eating watermelon not just because it was delicious, although it is, because I love watermelon, but because it reduces blood pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's obviously a medicine that we brought with us, but there are many medicines that were here, there are many plants that were here that we had to develop relationships with in order for us to continue to survive. You know what I'm saying? And not take it for granted that many of our ancestors that came over here were already master farmers, they were master gardeners, they were master herbalists, they were doctors, and so they came over here with a sort of general knowledge of taxonomy and plants and herbs and all of those things. And they also brought those things with them to a certain extent. But when you're in a new habitat, it is incumbent upon you, when you're in a new environment, it's incumbent upon you to be like, hey, look, who are you? I'm talking to the plants, who are you? What do you do? And that's, to me, that is an important component of hoodoo.
It sure is. As you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, like, for our people in the diaspora, for our people in this country in particular, like, we have carried, plants literally in our hair, as and having that type of relationship with us, and to create the type of experience we want. And like, you reminding us that it's not just about the physical uses of these plants, but reminding us that these plants that we are in contact with have sentience, have knowing, have their own level of understanding of the world around them, and we should respect them apart from what they can do for us, right?
And also understanding that, like, the earth here has supported us. You know what I'm saying? Like, the earth recognizes our significance as people. And that's one of the things that I don't think that we understand, because one of the reasons why we were kidnapped, abducted, and brought over here is because there were certain peoples that were not thriving, that were not thriving here. That we're not thriving with this land. We're not thriving in the United States. You know what I'm saying? And so we were a kind of intermediary. The earth, I believe, I know that the earth recognizes our significance even here, even in these lands. And so it's not just about being in relationship, it's also about understanding who we are as people, the power that we carry, our significance as people, which means that if we have that significance, if we have that power, if we have that ability to be in relationship, that we also have the responsibility to do it as well. And so it's incumbent upon us to not interact in ways that are centering Eurocentric dominant worldview. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not the way this land interacted with us.
And that is such a profound, such a profound word too. Because like you said, I think I'm just gonna be forthright. In a lot of spaces, herbalism is Eurocentric, and like it's only taught about the physical applications. Like we get into applications, learning about the what's that word? Not contradistinction, contraindications.
Yeah.
Before, or instead of, or with, the spiritual uses, the spiritual applications, the fact that this is a sentient being, the fact that we do have an obligation to care for this earth, and it's not just a resource, resource. And I want to make a transition with this question, since you kind of grounded in the fact that we are African descended people, we are Earth, we are people that who have always had a close relationship with the Earth, right? What are some common plants associated like with the Black liberation struggle widely, so that you can name, that had some spiritual applications or significance that sticks with you, or and that may be relevant to this whole empowerment conversation?
I don't really make a super distinction between plants that have physical applications and plants that have spiritual applications. There are one of the things that has always stuck with me is that cotton is a plant of resistance, is cotton being used as an abortifacient. Like that in and of itself, is like it continuously astounds me, the level of resistance, the level of and it probably shouldn't, but just the level of resistance and the level of assertion of beingness even in the midst of some of the greatest torture that the world has ever seen. Like you don't found cotton and done partner with it to control your body, in a way that on the most fundamental level, controlling one's own reproduction is one of the most fundamental levels of control. So for me, cotton as an abortifacient, as in cotton, and the fact that we were taught to, hold on really quickly. I'm sorry. Don't have to stop spraying that so much. But that's understandable, but you don't need that much. You really don't. You're going to put it every day. Please don't do that. Whew. I'm sorry. My kids are cleaning out a cooler.
Talking about the history of cottonseed or cotton. I know a little bit about that. I know like women in Alabama, other places use cottonseed as an abortion tool, and even I've read somewhere that it was also used to poison folks.
I have not read that, but I would not be surprised if that was the case. Um, what was I going to say? Something that I read the other day, like, not, not, I have a very close relationship with Poke, and Poke is one of those pokeweed,
Hawkweed.
pokeweed. And that's one of those plants that can be poisonous or it can be medicinal, and you can also eat it, but you have to know how to prepare it. And somebody was talking about serving massive raw poke salad, you know. So I think that there are, poke is one of those plants that definitely comes to my mind when I'm thinking about Black liberation and Black liberation movements. I think about okra, I think about watermelon a lot, because I think that those two plants that we brought with us that we use to attend to our ease and to our healing, you know, is something that I find very significant, very significant. And also, the watermelon plant, and the reason why watermelon began to have that stigma was because people were using watermelon and selling watermelon and becoming quite profitable, like becoming quite well off because they were selling watermelon. And that is also something, like, I know you probably saw the post on my Facebook, but part of my childhood growing up was waiting for the watermelon trucks to come from down south to Pittsburgh, and getting those watermelons every summer was one of the hallmarks of my childhood. One of the things that I remember, and so I think watermelon as a plant that supports our health, our well-being, Black joy, is something that really sticks with me. Okra, and the way that it supports childbirth, the way that it supports ease, the health, the health benefits of okra as well is one of those plants that I think really uh, uh, really is significant to me. Honestly, I feel like for me, plants that are in the hibiscus mallow family, like those type of plants, always to me seem very Black. And it does not matter like whether it's a hibiscus, the cotton plant, the rose of Sharon, all of those plants to me, for me, and I don't have anything that like really makes this, I have no evidence to this, but all of those type of plants, marshmallow plants, they resonate with me in a way that feels very, very much like they are a lot aligned with Blackness in a way that is supportive. So yeah.
Yeah, like even when we think, and I'm talking about hibiscus in general, even when we think about like all the hibiscus related drinks, like across the diaspora, like everything from hibiscus tea to sorrel in the Caribbean to
Right.
hibiscus drink in West and Central Africa. Like, no, that's definitely like spot on everything you're saying. And I'm wanting to then like our last little part of our discussion is in your own healing. So in your own healing, what plant allies have been special for you? And that process to us so we can see like where we mirror in your healing journey. And then I'll talk a bit about mine.
There are so many plans that have been supportive to me over the course of almost 2 decades that I've been working with plants on this level. Garlic. And I say garlic because, if you got an ear infection, or your baby has an ear infection, that's going to clear that up right quick. And if anybody has a baby who has an ear infection, who has had an ear infection knows that that's one of the most heart-wrenching cries that a baby has is when their ears are in pain. So garlic for me is a plant that has been very supportive. Lung herbs, lobelia, anise hyssop, what are some other lung herbs that have been there? Licorice. Um,
I didn't know licorice was a long herb. Wow.
yeah, licorice can help with lung ailments, but it's something also to be careful about because Lottie Spady told me that um it can increase your estrogen. So it's, if that's something that you're watching your hormone levels, then you want to be careful about ingesting too much licorice. Um, yeah, but one of my favorite plants is comfrey. I find comfrey to be so powerful and healing. Nettle is a deeply nourishing plant. Dandelion, um, like everything about dandelion. First of all, dandelion is edible from the flower to the root. Every part of it has medicine in it. It's a beautiful plant in and of itself. You know, dandelion is something that I feel like has a lot of spiritual significance to me. And it feels very supportive to me. It's also called Don de Leon in French, which is like the lion's tooth or the tooth of the lion. It's also called pistol, but which is piss in the bed, but I like Don de Leon. um, Let me see. Yeah, I have comfrey and dandelion on me right now. Burdock is another really deeply supportive plant that I feel like is something that people can use to support them in their health and strength in their foundation, you know, because burdock's roots are just so deep and they're really uh, nourishing. What are some other plants? Red raspberry leaf, motherwort for a broken heart. Motherwort is the first plant that I ever identified by myself. You know, did I ever tincture by myself? And I definitely used it to support a broken heart, and that's something that I recommend if you're dealing with that type of acute emotional pain. You know, um, red raspberry leaf is a good supportive herb. So I mean, I could go on and on and on. I have in my mind and in my practice, and I go in and out of the levels of relationship that I have with plants. But in my mind, I'm having a lifelong love affair with the plant kingdom. So I could list plants for a long time.
A plant that has become more popular to folks, at least that I've seen, is like mullein. And I would take mullein for stress and like when I was dealing with high blood pressure, well, borderline high blood pressure. But yeah, and it's so funny that I actually did some academic or research work on Sapelo Island, and I was looking at diabetes management using what they call alternative medicine. So like all herbal things being alternative medicine. And what I found is the people there would use mullein and things like rabbit tobacco that they call.
That's lobelia.
Yeah,
I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure because the name shit, but I think it's right. I think it's lobelia.
Yeah, that's called life everlasting on there. They take it for high blood pressure, diabetes, and things like that. So I've always been interested in collective uses of plant allies to maintain like one's health on every level.
Yeah.
And I want to ask uh, one last question, really a big question about like your spiritual practice and your spiritual business that you have, kind of like helping people through blockages and like how important it like what is that spiritual practice, that spiritual business you have, and how important are plant um, plant allies in that spiritual work that you do?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Oh, what, I know you work with people as a healer, I'm saying.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Your work that you do, what is the importance of plants?
Oh, I mean, plants are just like any other aspect of working with people. It depends on what I am, and how I'm interacting with people, and what's coming to me. Like plants will come to me and say, "Okay, this person could use this in the support. This person could use this in a bed. This person could use this." And different parts, different aspects of the work. But it's like, it's like if you have friends that have specialties, right? Like you have a friend that like if this person is experiencing like they're having trouble letting go of, relationships to people who are not very good for them. You know what I'm saying? Then you would call a friend who is specializes in supporting people in doing that. You know what I'm saying? And that friend for me will probably be a plant ally. You know what I'm saying? So it really just depends on what the condition is, what they are experiencing, and how plants can what plant is asking to be called on, because plants will ask to be called on. Like you develop a relationship, just like, if you have if your friend's name comes to your mind and you're like, man, I should call them. So you call them and they're like, yeah, I was just thinking about you. That's how plants work too. Plants do the same thing. So you're talking to somebody, you're filling them out energetically about what's going on, how are they moving, and then it's like, oh man, nettle would really be supportive in this way, and like helping them to fortify, strengthen themselves so they can stand up and be more, more themselves in the world, and so then you offer nettle, and that process it's a spiritual process, I think, but I think this plant medicine is spiritual, and it really depends on the person, and it really depends on what you're working with. It's part of it's not, but none of it is separate. None of it is separate, like I can talk and spirit can come. I can offer plants and spirit can come. I can be in ceremony and spirit will come. You know what I'm saying? I can, like, in all different ways. It's still spirit. It's all spirit. It's all spirit. It's just with tool. You know what I'm saying? With you come from that center, I think. Now, if I could say anything to anybody who wants to be a healer, is you come from the center of spirit. You move from spirit, you move from the intention of spirit. And then what tools you're asked to use, you'll be guided. And then you won't have to put on those shows, you won't have to fake it, you won't have to do none of that, because the way that you're moving is supported by spirit.
Mhm. That's so good. That's so good. And so for this last question, and you really went right into it, like offering wisdom to folks who want to be healers, to folks who want to do this plant ally work, this plant spiritual work that you do and that you're talking about. Um, would you like to offer any more wisdom to folks who want to be herbalists in particular?
I would love to offer some wisdom. First of all, I would like to say that Black wisdom and Black ways of knowing are very important for us. I'm gonna give you an example of that. So I have this, what they call disease. And it's like when you get like boils under your arm and in your groin. And a lot of Black people have that. And also like, razor bumps and stuff like that. Now, I have not seen any literature around supporting people in that, but I have found, and I have used with people, poke root. Poke root does that. Like if you're having issues of abscesses, boils, anything like that, poke root is that. You know what I'm saying? So like, but because I feel like those issues predominantly impact Black people, you don't see that out there. So there's such a necessity for Black people to be really invested in, developing their own lines, thought ways, thought lines, thought path, their own paths of knowledge so that we can get the healing that we need. The other thing that I would say for people who want to develop relationships with spirit, with plants, is take your time. Take your time. Everybody wants to be an encyclopedia and know 150 different plants. You can know one plant that can treat you in 20 different ways.
That's so good.
Say that. And if you have a relationship with a plant, you're going to learn different ways that this plant does things that other people will not know. It's just, so people want to be dazzled, but or they want to dazzle. People a lot of times want to dazzle. So there's so many different plans, and like all of the information, everything's on Google. So they're going to Google and they're researching, and they're in front of the screen and they're scrolling and they're scrolling and they're scrolling and they're scrolling, and you're not going to get the same depth of quality or depth of healing, from that as you would from going outside and just being with them, breathing with them, talking with them, walking with them, interacting with the plants themselves. That shift in perspective so that you can build that deep foundation for your practice will help you to be, first of all, it will just help you to be more flexible in what you are able to offer to people, because you're having a call and response with the plants. You're not going like, oh, this thing's for this symptom, this thing's for this symptom. So if somebody presents to you with something that you don't know, now you're shit out of luck. You know what I'm saying?
You're saying if we do, because this process is like a call and response kind of thing with plants, we can ask the plants like, what do I need to do, instead of like you just thinking Google is the source of it all,
Mm-hmm. And go slow. You know what I'm saying? So you don't get your thoughts mixed up with what the plant's telling you. You don't get, so you learn how to move with them. When the plant is talking to you and when it's your ego, like you go slow and you develop that relationship, and then your work becomes that much more effective on every level, on the healing the physical ailments, but also in healing the spiritual ailments. Because if you're doing spiritual work for somebody, plants will tell you things about how they interact with things on the spiritual realm that other people don't know.
That's so good. That's so powerful. I'm just sitting here thinking and just processing and thinking about the implications of all of that. And I'm just so appreciative for all the wisdom you offer during this short time. And that's all the questions I have. And one last thing is to ask, where can we find you online? Like, what's your social media? Where can we find your spiritual practice and follow you and see how we can work with you?
You can see my spiritual practice online at Tabernacle Life. That's on IG, is at Tabernacle Life. If you want to know more about plant healing and medicine and things like that, you can go to Medicine Makers on Facebook. We have a Facebook group where we discuss some of this stuff. And I'm Joy Tabernacle KMT on IG and on Facebook. So don't be afraid to pop in and say hello.
And we shall. Everybody, this is the amazing Joy Tabernacle KMT, and follow her on all the social media handles. And I want to make sure, is that your pronoun? Is that correct?
She, they, and opulence.
Okay. Follow opulence on IG and everywhere that opulence is. And with that, I want to say Thank you again, and peace to everybody who's listening. Peace.
That's it.
Bye.